I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here, typing out my story, but here I am. My name's Mike, and I was married to Lisa for just over 3 years. We'd been together since college, and honestly, for a while I thought we had a good thing going. She was a bit of a bitch sometimes, always throwing fits if I didn't do what she wanted, but she was also smart and funny and yeah, pretty damn hot. I figured that was enough. We planned the wedding, bought a house, started talking about kids. Everything seemed fine on the surface, but somewhere around the 6-month mark before the wedding, little things started to change. Lisa became more distant, phone always in her hand, hiding her screen when I walked into the room. She'd get fidgety if I asked about her day, brush off my questions with a quick, "Nothing's wrong, stop overthinking." I noticed she was texting more late at night, usually in bed with her phone pressed to her chest like she was hiding something. I'd catch her sneaking her phone away when I came into the room, her face tense. At first I thought maybe it was just work stuff or her friend Emily from the office, but the way she was acting, secretive, nervous, something was definitely off. One night I found her phone lying on the bed unlocked. I usually don't go through her stuff, but I was just curious. I saw a string of texts between her and someone named Tom. It wasn't just friendly banter either. There were flirtatious messages, talk about how much they missed each other when they weren't together, plans to meet up after hours. My stomach sank. I recognized Tom as her best friend from work. I'd met him a couple of times. Nice guy, but clearly something more was going on. That was the night I decided I wasn't going to ignore it. I waited until she was out with her friends, then I scrolled through her recent messages. They weren't just talking about work or random stuff. There were details about late-night calls, how they'd sneak around, how she loved the way he made her feel alive, and even some explicit stuff about their sex life. I saw enough to know that my wife was cheating on me with my best friend Tom. I couldn't believe it. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and furious all at once. When she got home that evening, I was sitting in the living room trying to hold it together. She walked in, all smiles, acting like everything was normal. I looked her right in the eyes and asked, "Lisa, who the hell is Tom?" Her face froze. She tried to laugh it off, brush it away, but I wasn't buying her bullshit. She immediately spun some lie about how I was just paranoid, how I didn't trust her, how Tom was just a friend she was talking to about her job, nothing more. But I knew better. Her secret texts, the late-night calls, the way she avoided my gaze, they all said otherwise. Her reaction was typical. She called me crazy, said I was overthinking, told me I was accusing her of something I clearly had no proof of. But I had enough. I told her I wasn't stupid, and I'd seen enough to know that she'd been lying to me for months. She kept denying, trying to gaslight me into thinking I was making it all up. But I felt the ground shift beneath me. I'd always believed in her, trusted her, but now everything felt broken, like the foundation of our relationship was nothing but a house of cards ready to collapse. That night was the worst. She kept saying she loved me, that I was overreacting, that Tom was just a dumb mistake, and that I should forgive her, but I couldn't. I sat there staring at her, feeling the betrayal deep in my bones. I was angry, hurt, and confused all at once. How could she lie so easily? How could she betray me with my best friend? I never thought she'd do something so cruel, especially right before our wedding. It felt like my entire world was crashing down around me, and I had no clue what would come next. After that night, everything changed. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, her lies, her sneaking around with Tom. I kept asking myself how I missed so many signs. Was I blind? Did I really know her at all? I felt this deep ache in my chest, part heartbreak, part rage, and I knew I couldn't just let this go, not without doing something about it. The next day, I started digging. I needed to see if she was still hiding things, if Tom was still part of her life. I checked her phone again when she wasn't around, but she'd already wiped most of the messages. Still, I found some recent texts, enough to confirm my suspicions. There were messages from Tom, telling her to meet him after work, describing how much they missed each other, how they couldn't keep their hands off each other even in sneaky ways. I even found a few photos. Her lying in his arms, her smirking at the camera like she was proud of what she was doing. That was the moment I realized I had to do something more than just be angry. I started planning. I wasn't going to confront her again immediately. I needed to see if she'd keep lying, if she'd try to cover her tracks. So I set a trap. I left my phone in my car with a recording app running, just in case she tried to call or text Tom again. I began watching her, noticing her phone was glued to her hand, her eyes darting around when I entered the room. She was different, more defensive, more tense. I knew she was hiding something, and I was determined to find out exactly what that was. One afternoon, I followed her to her work. She told me she was going to a meeting, but I knew better. I stayed nearby, watching her slip out of the office building at lunchtime and meet Tom in a nearby park. They talked for a few minutes, then he took her hand and kissed her right there in broad daylight. I saw enough. I felt like my blood was boiling. She was openly cheating on me, and she didn't care who saw. That was a slap in the face. I thought I knew her, but I was wrong. She was a different person, cold, manipulative, and selfish. Later that night, I saw her sneaking back into the house, her phone screen glowing in her hand. I waited until she went into the bedroom, then I quietly checked her messages again. Sure enough, more flirtatious texts, more plans to meet. That's when I decided I had enough. I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. I couldn't keep living in this lie, knowing she was with Tom behind my back. The next step was the confrontation. I waited until she was in the shower, then I took her phone and opened her last few messages. I wanted her to see that I knew everything. I set her phone on the table, then called her into the living room. When she stepped out, I showed her the messages, her own words, her secret plans with Tom. Her face went pale. She started stammering, denying everything, saying I'd misunderstood, that Tom was just a friend, that she loved me and she'd never cheat on me. But I was done listening. I told her I knew she'd been lying all along, that I had proof. I was furious, but I kept my voice steady even as my heart was breaking. She shouted back, calling me paranoid, saying I was crazy for suspecting her. She threw in some classic lies. Tom and I are just friends. It's not what it looks like. You're overreacting. But I didn't buy it. I could see the guilt written all over her face. Her lying only made me angrier. I realized that her whole act was just that, an act. She wasn't the person I thought I knew. I felt betrayed on every level. My trust, my confidence, my entire future with her, it all crumbled in that moment. I couldn't even look at her the same way anymore. It was a mess. She kept crying, trying to make me feel guilty, saying she'd changed, that she loved me. But I knew better. I knew I couldn't stay with someone who lied so easily, who had no respect for what we had. I was hurt, yes, but more than that, I was angry. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut, and I didn't know how to breathe through the pain. I kept asking myself if I could even forgive her, or if I should just cut my losses and walk away. I didn't want to stay with someone who'd cheat on me with my best friend, who'd lie so blatantly, and then expect me to just forget it. That's when I realized I had to figure out what I really wanted, whether to fight for this mess or to start over without her. After that confrontation, everything spiraled even faster than I expected. Lisa's lies kept coming, each new excuse more pathetic than the last. She said she was confused, under stress, and that Tom was just a mistake she made when she was drunk. She begged me to forgive her, said she loved me and that she'd end things with Tom immediately. Honestly, I felt like I was in some bad soap opera. I looked her dead in the eyes and told her I didn't believe her, that her words meant nothing after what I'd seen, after the betrayal she'd already committed. But she kept pushing, throwing a tantrum, trying to manipulate me into staying. She told me I was overreacting, that I was making a huge deal out of nothing, just insecure. She said she'd never cheat on me if I just trusted her again. It was the same bullshit she'd been saying all along. I felt a wave of anger rise up. How stupid I'd been to trust her in the first place. She was a master at spinning stories, lying through her teeth. And honestly, I was sick of the whole act. I decided I needed to get some space. I told her I couldn't stay in the same house, not after everything I'd uncovered. I packed a bag, told her I was leaving for a few days to clear my head, and walked out the door. That night I stayed at a friend's place. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, her lies, Tom's face in my head. I wondered how I could have been so blind, so stupid. I had trusted her for years, and now I was faced with the reality of her deception. It felt like I'd lost a part of myself. The next day, I started reaching out to my friends, people who knew her, knew us. I needed perspective, someone to talk some sense into me. I also did some digging online, trying to understand what I was feeling. Betrayal, heartbreak, anger. It's all normal, I guess, but nothing prepares you for the actual moment when you realize someone you loved so much is capable of this level of deceit. I kept asking myself how I missed the signs, how I didn't see her slipping away, how I'd been so blind to her bitchy, manipulative side. While I was trying to process everything, Lisa was texting me nonstop, crying, apologizing, promising she'd change. But I didn't want to hear it. I knew her game. She was just trying to manipulate me into staying, into forgiving her for what she did. But how could I forgive someone who not only cheated but lied about it, who thought she could get away with it just because she said a few sorries? The truth is, I felt betrayed on a level I'd never experienced before. She shattered every belief I had about trust, loyalty, and love. I realized I couldn't go back, at least, not without some serious changes, and I wasn't sure she was capable of that. I spent the next couple of days wrestling with what to do. Deep down, I knew I couldn't just pretend this never happened. I couldn't keep living in denial. I had to decide whether to fight for the marriage or cut her loose. A part of me still loved her. God, I wanted to believe she'd change. But another part knew that her lies had become too much to ignore. Every time I thought about her sneaking around, Tom hiding in my shed that night when I found him, fucking her in my own backyard, it all came rushing back. That image will haunt me forever. The betrayal ran deep, and I knew I had to make a choice. So, here I am, still standing in the middle of this mess, trying to figure out what's next. I've told her I need some time, that I don't want to see her right now. I want her to understand what she's done. I want her to realize that her lies and her selfishness have consequences. And honestly, I don't know if I can ever trust her again. That's the truth. All I know is that this whole thing has completely turned my world upside down. I thought I knew her, thought we had something real, but now I see how fragile trust really is, and how easily it can be broken. The days that followed were the hardest I've ever gone through. Every minute, every hour, I was caught between anger, sadness, and disbelief. I kept replaying everything in my head: the late-night calls she denied, her sneaky texts with Tom, the way she lied to my face and played innocent. It was like my entire reality had been ripped apart, and I was left trying to piece together what was real. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't focus. All I could do was think about how she had shattered my trust, how she'd betrayed me with my best friend Tom right before our wedding. I started to realize just how much her actions had affected me. I'd always been a straightforward person, someone who believed in honesty and loyalty. But now, I wasn't sure what to believe anymore. Everywhere I looked, I saw her lies. It felt like a punch in the gut every time I remembered that she'd been hiding her affair so well, even when I was right there in the same house. How could she lie so convincingly? How could she look me in the eyes and deny everything? I started questioning everything: her motives, her feelings, even my own judgment. One night I was sitting alone in my apartment, exhausted from trying to process everything, when I got a message. It was from Lisa. She was apologizing again, more tears, more begging. She said she was lost, that she didn't mean for any of this to happen, that she was just weak and stupid. She swore she'd end things with Tom and that she'd do whatever it took to fix us. I read her messages, and honestly I felt a flicker of something, hope, maybe, but it was quickly overshadowed by my doubt. I'd heard the same promises before, and they never meant anything when she was sneaking around behind my back. The thing is, I also knew I couldn't just pretend this was all a mistake or something she'd forget overnight. Not after what I'd seen. I started thinking about what I really wanted. Was I willing to forgive her? Could I even stay in a marriage where trust was completely broken? Every time I thought about her lying to my face, sneaking around with Tom, I felt this deep ache, like I was losing a part of myself. The betrayal hit me so hard that I wondered if I'd ever feel normal again. I decided I had to take control. I couldn't just sit around waiting for things to blow over or for her to magically change. I needed to get some clarity, so I made a plan to talk to Tom, my so-called best friend. I needed to hear from him, see if he felt any remorse or if this was just some game to him too. I also wanted to know how long they'd been doing this, how much they'd hurt me, and if there was any more to uncover. I couldn't believe I was about to confront my own best friend, my supposed brother-in-arms, over the woman I loved. It felt surreal. That afternoon, I found a way to get in touch with Tom. I told him I needed to meet him face to face. When we finally met up, I kept my cool, at least outwardly. I looked him in the eyes and asked him directly what the hell was going on. He didn't deny anything. Instead, his face was blank, almost like he was waiting for me to throw the first punch. I could see the guilt in his eyes, but it was mixed with something else, defense, maybe even arrogance. He tried to justify it, saying she came on to him, that it was just sex, and that it didn't mean anything. I didn't buy a word of it. We argued, a blow-by-blow of what had happened, and I realized something, that both of them had betrayed me in different ways. Lisa had betrayed my trust, lied to my face, and cheated on me. Tom had betrayed his friendship, his loyalty, all for some fleeting pleasure. It was disgusting. I felt my world collapsing even more. I had trusted them, believed in them, and now I saw how toxic that trust had been. I told both of them I was done. I couldn't stay with someone who could do this, to me, to my future, to everything I believed in. I made it clear that I was walking away from both of them. I needed time to breathe, to heal, to figure out what I wanted without all of this chaos. Honestly, I felt numb, like I'd been punched in the chest so many times I couldn't feel anything anymore. But deep down, I knew this was the beginning of the end for us. I didn't see how I could ever rebuild what was lost. The betrayal was too deep, the wounds too raw. So I walked away that day, leaving her and Tom behind. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew I couldn't stay in a lie. I had to face the pain, the anger, and the heartbreak. And I had to start figuring out how to pick up the pieces of my shattered life. The truth is, I don't know if I'll ever fully recover from this. But I do know one thing: trust, once broken this badly, is almost impossible to fix. And I'll never forget how much everything changed in just one moment of betrayal. The weeks that followed were a blur of emotion and decision-making. I moved out of the house, into a small apartment I found nearby. It was a tiny place, but it felt like a sanctuary compared to that hellhole of betrayal. Every day I woke up with a knot in my stomach, knowing I had lost the woman I thought I knew, and my best friend, someone I'd trusted implicitly, had turned out to be just as selfish and manipulative. At first, I couldn't even look at myself in the mirror without feeling disgusted. How could I have been so blind? I replayed every moment, every sign I'd ignored, every time I dismissed her bitchy attitude or brushed aside her little lies. Now all I could see was a woman who was willing to ruin everything for some fleeting sex with Tom. And Tom, I still couldn't believe he'd done this to me, to us. My best friend, someone I'd confided in, trusted with my secrets, and he did this. It was like a punch in the gut every time I remembered that night. In my shed, when I found him hiding there, her in his arms. Honestly, I felt shame. Shame that I let it go on for so long, that I didn't see the signs, that I believed she loved me even when she was clearly playing me. But I also felt this strange sense of relief, like a weight had been lifted. I finally saw her for what she was: manipulative, selfish, and utterly unfaithful. I realized I'd been holding onto a fantasy, a lie I told myself because I didn't want to face the truth. The truth was brutal, but at least now I could start healing. I started reaching out to people I trusted: my brother, my parents, some friends. I needed advice, reassurance, a reality check. It surprised me how many people had been through something similar or had their own stories of betrayal. They told me I was doing the right thing by walking away, that I deserved someone who actually valued me. Still, it didn't make it any easier. The pain was constant, like a dull ache that wouldn't go away. Most nights, I'd lie in bed awake, trying to fight the thoughts racing through my head. I'd remember her bitchy attitude, the way she'd lie so effortlessly, her callousness when I confronted her. I kept asking myself, how could she do this? How could she lie so easily? It made me feel sick sometimes, like I'd been naive for trusting her at all. But I also knew deep down that I couldn't keep living in that betrayal. One thing that helped was focusing on myself. I started hitting the gym again, trying to get stronger physically and mentally. I took long walks, listened to music, and even started reading some self-help books. I realized that despite everything, I still had some pride left. I wasn't going to let her or Tom ruin me completely. I wanted to rebuild myself, my confidence, and eventually my life. But the hardest part was the loneliness. I'd never felt so isolated, so betrayed. The woman I was supposed to spend the rest of my life with had thrown it all away just like that. And my best friend. That was the worst blow of all, the one I never saw coming. It was like losing two pieces of my world at once. I wondered if I'd ever be able to trust. Again, I wondered if I'd ever love again. All I knew was I had to get through this, one day at a time. Now I'm at a crossroads. I don't know whether I should try to work things out with her or just move on completely. Part of me wants to believe she might change, that maybe she'll realize how much she's lost. But another part, my gut, says she's not worth it, that her lies and manipulations are who she really is. I've learned a lot from all this, mostly that trust is fragile, and sometimes people will betray you even when you least expect it. So I'm here, sharing my story in the hope that maybe someone out there has been through something similar. If you're in a relationship and you're seeing signs of trouble, secret phone calls, late nights, evasiveness, trust your instincts. Don't ignore the small signs because they usually lead to bigger betrayals. And if you're already at the point where you've been betrayed, know that you're not alone. It hurts like hell, but you can get through it. Trust me, I'm still trying, one day at a time. It's been a few months now since I walked out of that house for the last time, since I saw her lying to me, sneaking around with Tom, and everything fell apart. Honestly, I don't recognize myself sometimes. I've gone from being a guy who believed in loyalty and love to someone who's just trying to put the pieces back together. The pain still lingers, but I've learned to live with it. I've had to. I've realized that sometimes people show you who they really are, whether you want to see it or not, and that the biggest lesson is to trust yourself, not just the words people throw at you when they're trying to manipulate or lie. Looking back, I see how naive I was. I really thought she loved me, that she was my partner for life. Turns out she was just playing a game, and I was the pawn she used and discarded. That realization hurt more than I can put into words, but it also set me free in a strange way. I don't have to carry around the weight of her lies anymore. I don't have to pretend I don't see her for what she really is, a selfish woman who thought her own pleasure was more important than the people she claimed to love. I had to make some tough choices. I cut her out of my life completely. No contact, no explanations, just a clean break. The pain of that was almost overwhelming, I won't lie. There were nights I wanted to call her, to hear her voice, just to understand why she did this to me. But I knew that wouldn't help. It would just reopen wounds that are still healing. So I chose to focus on myself, on rebuilding my confidence, and on finding happiness again, even if it took time. What I've come to understand is that betrayal cuts deep, but it also forces you to confront your own resilience. I've started dating again, cautiously. It's early days, but I realize now that not everyone is like her. There are good people out there, people worth trusting, worth loving. I'm not rushing anything, I'm taking it slow. Because what I learned from her is that betrayal can happen even when you least expect it. And the way to protect yourself is to rebuild your trust in the right people, not everyone. One thing I want to say to anyone who's been through something similar: do blame yourself. It's easy to get caught up in guilt, wondering if you could have done something differently. But trust me, if someone is determined to lie and cheat, no amount of vigilance can always stop them. Sometimes people just choose to be selfish and manipulative. The best thing you can do is learn from it, protect yourself moving forward, and never settle for less than you deserve. As for me, I'm slowly moving on. I'm not sure what the future holds, but I know I'm stronger than I was when all this started. Betrayal will always leave scars, but I refuse to let it define me. I will rebuild my life, piece by piece, until I find happiness again, on my own terms. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's that the only trust worth having is the one you give to yourself. No one else can protect your heart like you can, and no betrayal can take away your will to keep going. So here I am, finally ready to let go of the past, no longer bound by her lies or Tom's selfishness. I've faced the worst, and I've come out the other side a little wiser. Life will go on, and I'll find a way to be okay again. That's the real lesson. No matter how shattered you feel, you can always rebuild. You just have to want it enough.